Hello everybody, I'm Dr. Carmen Stoyan. I'm a lecturer in international business at Kent Business School, and I'm here to talk about Brexit and the UK economy, the good, the bad and the ugly. So by now we are all familiar with what Brexit means. It means the UK leaving the EU. It's not a simple process though. It takes 2 years of negotiations in which the UK will negotiate the terms and conditions of leaving the organisation. This process has already started in March 2017 and it's happening as we speak. So what are they negotiating? First, they're negotiating the conditions of withdrawal from the UK, the EU, and then the nature of the relationship, future relationship between the UK and the European Union. So why is the UK leaving the European Union? So we know about the referendum which took place on 23rd of June 2016 and which was won by a small margin by the supporters of Leave campaign. Not too many people know about the fact that actually Winston Churchill advocated the idea of the United States of Europe shortly after the end of the World War II. So his vision about United States of Europe was based on thinking of how best to rebuild the continent after the damage of the World War II. However, the European Union, the UK has been seen as a reluctant partner in the European Union for a long time, and problems surfaced a little bit more when the EU enlarged in 2004 and 2007, and the UK found itself being a destination of many Eastern Europeans who found the place quite appealing. UKIP has also increased its popularity on the basis of this. Also based on some of the economic disparities within the UK. There has been a feeling of disenfranchisement amongst some pockets of population in the UK, which has led to the vote being against the EU membership. So these are all the things why we are leaving, but what has the Leave campaign promised? And it's important to know what they promised, because then we need to know how, because this has also influenced the agenda of the negotiations and the policy that the government has put in place, and can affect, of course, the impact that Brexit may have on the economy. So just to recap, the Leave campaign promised taking back control over borders, control over regulation, control over finances, control over which trade partners the UK should have, and control over that's more important money that should go actually, instead of going to the UK, to the EU budget, should go to NHS, the 350 million per week. So why talk about Brexit? We've been talking so much. Is there something more to say? Well, Brexit is the likely impact of Brexit will go beyond the economics in the UK. Of course, it can affect the social cohesion of the country, the political stability of the country, even the economic standing of Britain in the world post-Brexit. It can affect also the foreign policy of the country, and can even affect the shape of the Union. Also, the impact goes beyond just the UK itself. The European Union is going to be at risk of its economic growth and income. Well, studies have found that may suffer from this. Soon after Brexit, the IMF has had to cut its forecast for economic growth in the world as well. Also, there could be opportunities for lots of all these countries that Britain wants to embrace relationships with as part of its global Britain strategy. So it could be opportunities and risks for countries and for economies around the world. So the impact is very important, and it goes beyond the British shores. Also, this is an unprecedented phenomenon. Of course, Greenland left the EU before, but that's a very small, it's a different case altogether. We don't know what will happen. Brexit brings more questions than answers, and all these things are going to affect, are likely to affect international business, political risk and economic risk in the UK, and as I said, beyond the UK shores. Also, it's very important to be very realistic about the benefits and the costs of Brexit so that policies can be put in place to minimize the costs and maximize the opportunities. We have to have a realistic assessment of what's going to happen and deal with that within the parameters that we can work with. Why should I talk about Brexit? Well, I'm a scholar of international business, and it's very fascinating, intriguing to see all this impact that Brexit may have on opportunities and risks that the UK economy presents for multinationals, and how companies can deal with these risks and opportunities, and how the government can make sure that Brexit delivers. Also, I'm a scholar of European studies. I started my career in this country studying about the impact that European integration can have on member states. And at the time, in the 90s, I was studying about how the prospects of European integration for Poland can actually enhance their political stability and attract more investors, leading to more economic growth, less political risk, economic risk. So all this in my mind was, in my research, I found that EU membership can lead to a virtuous circle of economic growth and development. Of course, there is a potential then that the lack of EU integration can lead to a vicious circle of economic growth and development unless something else is put in place. So good things is some of the forecasts of experts before Brexit and vote haven't come yet to fruition. The economy is not in as bad shape as it was promised or forecasted. Economic growth has been achieved. The devaluation of the British pound has helped many manufacturers increase their exports, which contributed to some economic growth. People continued spending despite quite high inflation, again as a result of the weakening of the pound. Unemployment is quite low because, and some of it is part of the increasing gig economy that exists in Britain today. But Brexit hasn't happened yet. Many companies haven't yet packed up and their operations haven't divested because many companies are just waiting and seeing what is happening. So a lot of we are still part of the European Union. So many of the effects that economists have forecasted will not take place until Brexit really happens. So the other good news is that the government has a strategy and a vision. This vision of global Britain could actually play the same role as the European integration aspiration played for Eastern European countries in the 90s and create a virtuous circle of development. The promise of free trade with many countries around the world can sound as a good opportunity for many companies. Yes, it's a vision. It's it's something to look for. Of course, we have to think about how to implement that and what are the challenges and the costs of such a vision. Of course, you can open up trade with the United States, Canada, with Commonwealth countries, English-speaking and non-English-speaking, with China, with India. And we've seen the government trying to ramp up deals with some of these countries. Now, it will take time to come up to these deals. It will take also a lot of negotiating capability. Also, at the moment, Britain offers investors all the location advantages that come with being member of the single market. Many of the companies that are based in the UK, the non-EU companies based in the UK, more than half of them are using UK as a springboard for investing in the European Union itself. So if you lose that advantage, that access to the single market, then it's possible that some of this investment may not be coming. Studies also show that if there is also an idea of liberalizing trade unilaterally and cutting tariffs, import tariffs to imports from all the other countries apart from the EU post-Brexit. That's a good idea as well. You can lower the costs for consumers, lower the cost of inputs for companies as well, create competitiveness. The downside, or studies have shown that such a unilateral move may not have dramatic improvement or effects because many of the tariff barriers are already quite low. under WTO rules for some of the products that we are thinking about, but it's the non-tariff barriers, the regulations, the country of origin, the regulations regarding the country of origin, or any other customs requirements. These are the ones that slow down business, and they create more costs as well. So what about the UK, Brexit and the UK economy and the bad? Well, the bad is, well, there's a lot of uncertainty, and businesses don't like uncertainty usually, although some businesses, of course, strive through uncertainty, and they need to put in place strategies to deal with. But there's a lot of political uncertainty. We don't know too much about Brexit. We don't know if there's a vision from the government. We don't know who is in charge sometimes. We don't know what deal is going to be negotiated. Now, we know that there will be a bespoke deal that is sought after, but we have to think about that when the UK negotiates with the EU keeps in mind the fact that whatever deal is offered to the UK, it can't be better than a deal that a member state has, because the EU has foremost to cherish and to protect its own identity and its own future. So if countries find it much easier to be outside the EU than inside the EU, why should they continue to pay? So in a way, there's going to be some thinking in that. What else? Is no deal an option? Now, no deal means the WTO trade terms, which means high tariffs for exports and imports for UK companies, also high barriers to investment, other non-tariff barriers that can create a very high costs for British consumers, for British firms, cutting their profits, so and endangering their living standards. And the other question, will the deal deliver the promises of the campaign, and can the deal actually increase the competitiveness of the UK economy? Now, although it's on the bad side, the UK can try to build its competitiveness more based on its own internal resources, develop its more talent, local talent. Suppliers can be found from the local economy more for many companies or for many industries. So there could be an opportunity in Brexit to try to enhance the competitive advantages the country has. But in a world of globalization in which the UK economy is highly integrated with the EU economy, it will be quite a difficult challenge to disentangle the UK from the EU and then just altogether find different partners in different countries. The other side is the economic, more on the economic risk. So of course, multinationals don't like political risk, and then many times we've seen that many companies have decided to either not recruit so many people or put on hold the investment plans. Some in the city, they have already thought about relocating some financial institutions have talked about relocating some of the operations in other European countries in order to keep their passporting rights. The financial industry is likely to be quite strongly affected negatively by Brexit, but the impact will depend on the short run, will vary if it's in a short run or long run. Now, the financial industry is a very important, it's a top exporter industry for the UK. It pays highest taxes, it employs around 2 million or more people. It's a very important important industry, and the government needs to think how its competitiveness would be affected by Brexit. So in the short, it is a more footloose industry in the sense that if they decide to relocate, the costs are not so high. But on the other hand, we know that the city has something more than just, it's something more than just the sum of many, many financial institutions. It's an ecosystem that is vibrant, operations are there, all the financial institutions work with the legal firms. It's a cluster that will not be very easily replicated in a short run in France or in other financial centers in the UK, in the EU. But, of course, the government and the businesses are quite interested in thinking how this industry can be actually protected post-Brexit. Another industry that may suffer quite a lot from Brexit is the manufacturing industry. They, of course, they are they are exporting a lot of their product to the European Union, so they are dependent on the European Union market. They are also, their supply chain is integrated with the European Union countries. So if it's a no deal scenario or WTO terms, the imports will be of inputs will be much higher. The exports to the European Union will be more expensive. There's a 10% tariff, export tariff to the EU in the car manufacturing industry. So this industry is quite likely. Of course, you can find more partners in countries beyond the European Union in the future, but companies have to think about that. Also, at the moment, they recruit the talent from the European Union, so they will need to think about diversifying and recruiting talent from other countries. So the industry has to think long term now and plan for all these eventualities, or nurture more homegrown talent, of course, or they have to think about bringing their supply chain in the country and sourcing more from the country. Now, these capabilities can be built, but sometimes it takes some time and needs some money as well. And you know very well that after the referendum, Nissan really was thinking, you know, the CEO of Nissan was thinking, I think I might not reinvest in the economy, I'm not sure about this. And they continue to invest in the UK. They are a very important employer in this country and an engine economic growth. And that was also based on reassurance from the government that any extra costs that will come with the Brexit will be met by the government. So this is what we have to factor in as well when we think about the economic effect of Brexit on the economy. We need to think about different industries. The creative industries, they can be affected as well by the availability of talent post-Brexit, and there have been pressures on the government to actually perhaps look at short-term visas for these people, or again, of course, branch out and get talent from outside the European Union. We also think about how the strategies, what sort of strategies companies can put in place, short-term versus long-term as well. But somewhere along the line, the government will have to help a bit more. The government have to, and they have shown that they have to go either through increased industrial policy or financial incentives. And government intervention has its advantages and has disadvantages as well. So this is what has to be factored in: the cost of government intervention, the effectiveness of it, and to the extent to which in the long run some firms may think, well, actually it makes sense to continue to be in the UK, and then of course, or they may want to relocate. But only time will tell really about that. So that we've talked about the good and the bad. They are very intrinsically related, actually. So there's, and then let's talk about the ugly. The ugly is, well, we really don't know. We can't quantify exactly what will happen. There are quite a few studies, 50 studies, I think, that have been commissioned by the EU government about the impact of Brexit for various scenarios, and that's a good thing. But many of these impacts and costs will only come to the fore once Brexit has already happened. So that's the ugly. The ugly bit is that we don't know. It's very uncertain, but of course sometimes it could, you know, some good can come sometimes from uncertainty as well. The other are the promises of the Leave campaign going to be delivered upon? So in the end, for example, the promise of more control over regulation. Well, if we want to continue to trade with the European Union, British companies will have to continue to respect some of the regulations in the UK, in the EU. Of course, some of them, there will be scope for more regulations or less regulations in other areas, but some of the regulations that the EU companies have to abide by, and that the companies that deal with the EU in the EU have to abide by, British companies will have to continue to abide by. And the problem is that by not being in the European Union, we will not have control over making those regulations. So yes, there will be more control in some areas, but perhaps in some control will not be there. In terms of the costs, some study from the London School of Economics calculated that actually the costs associated with losing access to the single market will be much higher than the money that Britain actually sends every year to the European Union in terms of the European budget. In terms of control of immigration, perhaps there will be some more control over immigration from Eastern Europe or from European Union, but many trade deals that are going to be negotiated, and we've seen already discussions taking place with India, many of the trade deals will have to also contain deals about immigration as well. So it will be still on the agenda. So this is it really. So yes, Brexit is around us. We have to keep an eye on what's happening, be sort of open-minded and see how companies can deal with this, how the government can deal with this, and just watch this space really. Thank you very much.